In 18th century Britain, we had been involved in the Atlantic slave trade for hundreds of years. Merchants would sail to the west coast of Africa, capture or trade for enslaved people before sailing to the West Indies to auction off their cargo to buy luxury goods. British cities and many individuals were abundantly rich from the slave trade, and it was clear they did not want it to end. However, the tide was turning. A group of men, the abolitionists, were waging a war against it. Ridiculous as it may seem, they had to ensure that their arguments against the slave trade were strong enough to convince the public that trade and livelihoods could prosper without the sale of human beings. They had to make sure their arguments convinced the British public and government enough that they had no choice but to come to the same conclusion. Slavery had to be abolished. In your history essay, you must do something very similar. You need to finish your essay using the evidence available to convince your marker that your judgment is the correct one. Let's find out more. This is Think 4. Let's look at this strong example conclusion from the following question. How important was the decline in the economic importance of slavery as a reason for the success of the abolitionist campaign in 1807? For an isolated question, the ones with a factor in the question, such as economic, you firstly want to refer to each of your other factors such as political or military and rank them, starting with the least important, and summarise each of them, giving a balanced view. For example, in conclusion, the decline in economic importance played a role in the success of the abolitionist campaign as many plantation owners struggled to make profits. However, the slave trade continued for many years after the abolition in 1807, suggesting that economic considerations were not a direct factor. Next, you want to give a clear answer in line with the question. Remember to answer the exact question that's been asked. Refer to the isolated factor and state whether this is the most important reason. If it isn't, then say what factor is. Overall, the main reason for the success of the abolitionist campaign in 1807 was not the decline in economic importance of slavery, but the religious revival in Britain. Lastly, you want to provide evidence to support your judgment. For this, you should refer to the evaluation points you included in your essay to show why the factor you've chosen is more important than the others. It's very important to do this for the factor mentioned in the question. For example, abolition was the first modern political campaign which changed the views of the public and put pressure on politicians. Religion was the key to this campaign, as groups like the Quakers were able to portray slaves as fellow humans and creatures of God. This was more important to the public than economic arguments, which were really only relevant to plantation owners. Then you need to also refer to your other factors showing why religion is more important. The abolitionists won because they channeled arguments, shaping the way people in British society viewed the slave trade. People began to conclude that the trade was wrong, and so the politicians followed. You can also shape opinion in your history essays. You can make the reader follow a path of logic and arguments so that by the time they reach the conclusion, they are in little doubt. The conclusion should bring it all together. The arguments, the analysis, and your judgment should all refer to the question you're addressing. This was Think 4. Thanks for watching.